Welcome into the Newport This Week video podcast series, kicking off our 2025 series. You can find every episode at newportthisweek.com or on the Newport This Week YouTube channel. You should go ahead and subscribe to that because in addition to the podcast, there's a lot of great coverage of some of the municipal meetings and beyond that take place in and around the community that we love. We have we're really trying to dig into city council, school board, so on and so forth this year on the podcast. And we have a new counselor, Ellen Pinnock, who is uh, the North End is a huge part of the conversation altogether when we talk about Newport, really the whole island as a whole. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But Counselor, welcome to the podcast and congratulations on your election.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here, Bill.
Give us the rundown in some of your, we'll call them legislative priorities going into your first year on the council.
Yeah, sure. So, at the top of my list personally is like the Admiral Kalfas Road issue, which has been ongoing for quite some time, and my predecessor Angela Lima worked really hard on that. And I don't want to drop the ball on that. Like I don't want to let that go. The hard work that she did alongside the residents was really important. And it's really important that the work that needs to be done on that road in order to make it safe happens. And I know I've heard a little bit that it's a traffic issue, and I think at this point it's a health and safety issue. And I do understand that Middletown has some issues with traffic being pushed onto West Main Road and JT Connell Highway. If traffic common measures or when traffic common measures happen on Admiral Kalfas Road, but at the same time, I feel like those two roads are built more um, for heavier traffic, whereas Admiral Kalfas Road is densely populated. Kids are using it to go to school, they're crossing the street, people are afraid to pull in out of their driveways. So that really is one of the things that's at the top of my list to get resolved sooner rather than later.
Mm.
And aside from Admiral Kalfas Road, the lead pipe issue has been coming up quite a bit. I can't tell you the amount of emails that I've received recently with our residents being concerned about the levels of lead that are in their water, whether or not pipes need to be replaced in their homes. Flood mitigation, that impacts the north end quite a bit, particularly over on the point area. That's super important as well. And then housing is at the top of everyone's list. But I will say for me, as far as legislation goes, I'm more concerned with the systemic issues that are preventing people from having housing. Like I am concerned with the Airbnbs and all of those things too, but I do think that there has to be some focus on the systemic issues, like the cliff effect, and all of those things that are keeping people from either owning homes or being able to move outside of subsidized housing.
Right. All extremely important and essential to growth across the island. And really, as you said, there's just no doubt that from a housing standpoint, we have to look at, we hear so much about build, supply and demand, all valid positions that the Speaker of the House has taken, that other members of the City Council in Newport have taken. But you need that in tandem with, it's like a garden, and you need to
Yeah,
grow systemic
exactly.
issues, or you need to grow out of those
Yes.
systemic issues being in sort of the central barriers that and in that case we don't talk about it enough. Something that there's a great article in the paper about, which is, I mean, it makes so much sense, is something you're advocating for: childcare at council meetings. We have a
Yeah.
scenario where there is no doubt a diminished access for folks who are parents and don't have access to private childcare when it comes
Right.
to city council, zoning board, so on and so forth. Talk about that issue, please.
Sure. So, as a council, we've talked a lot about more clarity and making sure that our residents know what's going on. And I think there's a large group of residents who cannot come to council meetings because of childcare. I've worked a long time in community. I've held a lot of community conversations. And one of the things that I've done in these conversations, which typically happen in the evening, is to make sure that there is childcare there free of charge. Because if we really want people involved, then we're going to do whatever we can to break down the barriers that are keeping people from showing up. And while childcare may not seem like a really important issue, to me it is, because as a person who is a single parent myself, I know what it's like to not be able to be involved in things because you don't have anywhere to place your child because you can't afford it, or there aren't any childcare centers even open in the evenings when a lot of these conversations are occurring. So I do think it's really important that we consider every barrier. And that kind of is at the top of my list as the number one.
NewportThisWeek.com and the Newport This Week print edition. You can find that story and it gets into more detail on it. I think it's something that a conversation that needs to continue and expand outwards as well, not just council and zoning board, school committee meetings or whatever it may
Yeah,
be, but it's a broad issue. All right, let's talk about the North End. The North
sure.
End feels like one of the most, even on a statewide or regional basis, I mean, the breakdown of the relationship between the private sector and development of whether it's the Carpinato Group and the Newport Grand facility, the realignment project, which is obviously not private sector, but the DOT and that project, and just a general. It feels like, I'll say this, it feels like where we thought we were going is not where we are right now. Where we thought we were going was closer to where we need to be. How do we get the North End into a position where it no longer feels or is practically disconnected from the rest of the city? And how
Mm.
do we spur organic economic development and organic opportunities in housing and beyond for folks who live in the North End?
I will say I agree with you. I do feel like living here and working here that it's always kind of felt disconnected. I will also say that with the redevelopment, um, I feel like it's not as disconnected. Like if you're driving, you can get downtown a little quicker and from downtown to the north end a little quicker with like the realignment and all of those things. But I do think that community engagement, a lot of our residents haven't felt like they've had a voice in what is going on in our community. There have been a few community groups that have shown up to city council, especially when like Capianato was trying to acquire the the slots. Sorry about that. And all those things. But I think that the community engagement has vastly diminished. And I believe that our residents need to have a voice because at the end of the day, folks live here and work here. And if anything's going to happen in their community, they need to be a part of the decision making process. So I think as a council, more conversations need to happen. We need to get people on boards and commissions that are living in this community also, so that they can understand what is happening. But also people who are living in this community have a lot to say. Like I was on the ad hoc bridge realignment commission and I learned a lot from the time that I was able to spend there. I had to step off when I was elected to council, but I learned so much about what was going on with the 25 or so acres of land that we have after the redevelopment. And I wouldn't have learned anything about that had I not had the opportunity to be on that commission. And I was on that commission because of the work that I do in community. And I was recognized as a person who is invested. But we have many, many residents who are maybe not seen as much, but are deeply invested in what happens in our community. I think it's up to us to reach out to them.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And it certainly is just a major priority, I think, for a lot of people. And to have that voice, which you seem to be ready to be the representative of
Yeah.
those voices, is critical. Just lastly, here, as you look at the state of the city council right now, is it a function? Is it a body that can function in a productive manner? From your initial impressions, are you confident that even among counselors who may disagree on significant issues, that we're in a position where we're going to have a functional legislative board, if you will, as we move into
Yeah.
2025?
Yeah, I do think so. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Lord knows what will happen after I say this, but I'm gonna say it. As a person who was seeing things from the other side, it felt very different than it feels right now. I do feel like collectively the council wants to move forward together and work on these really important issues in our community together. Like I'm the Ward 1 representative. We've got, a Ward 2 and a Ward 3. And then, we have all of the other counselors who represent Newport at large. But I do feel like if something occurs in Ward 1 and the email goes to everyone, everyone kind of has a voice, even though it's like I'm the ward representative. I haven't felt like people have just pushed it off to me because I'm the one representing the ward. It seems like everybody on the council is actively working towards things that will better our community, which I'm really, really grateful for. I do think that transparency is going to be better, clarity is going to be better. Those things are high up on the agenda of all of the other 6 members of the council, as well as myself.
Yeah, it's nice to have functional government in 2025 at a time where it seems like government and all Western democracies are challenged by a seemingly first and foremost element of dysfunction and people getting to
Yeah.
their camps. So collaboration and actually doing the work is becoming seemingly more and more rare. I would agree. It seems like by and large the council's ready to work towards these big goals and big needs that the
Yeah.
city has.
Yeah, they definitely are. I'm really grateful to be part of this group of people who care so much about what's going on in Newport. And it really does feel like the other 6 members are my colleagues. I don't feel like we're working against one another with our own personal agendas or any of the things. You can't really control what goes on social media. People have their own ideas and they will run with them, and that's okay. But I can honestly say that as someone who was brand new to the city council, I've felt very welcome. Every last member has reached out to me prior to the first meeting to make sure that if I had any questions, they were going to be answered, or if I needed any support or guidance, they were there, and that's felt really nice.
Counselor, thanks so much for your time and congratulations
Thank
again.
you. Thank you very much, Bill.